Imagine a planet you know. Now remove from that image its single most crucial component. We are not speaking of a distant future or a hypothetical scenario. We are simply removing it and observing what remains. The water is gone. Not merely have the rivers dried up, they have transformed into deep, dusty canyons whose bottoms have never seen sunlight. The oceans, they are no more. Only giant lifeless basins plunging deep into the Earth's crust, covered in a layer of salt and the fossilized remnants of past life. The air has become as dry as dust. It burns the lungs not with heat, but with its absolute merciless dryness. You will not find a single drop of dew on leaves, because the leaves are gone too. The trees stand like gray stone statues, their sap having evaporated in an instant. Look at your home. The faucets in the kitchen and bathroom are silent. Not a single sound of dripping, no hissing of water in the pipes. The system that sustained your life every second is now just a network of empty metal vessels. Now look out the window. The city is frozen. No haze from industrial chimneys, because without water, all production has ceased. No steam from the cooling towers of power plants, which can no longer cool reactors and turbines. The roads are empty, because fuel for vehicles has become a meaningless resource in a world with nothing to drink. What do you feel? Thirst. But this is not a thirst that can be quenched. It is a given, a new state of being. Your body, like the body of the planet, is beginning to change on a fundamental level. The moisture on the surface of your eyes evaporates, forcing you to blink more often, but it brings no relief. Every breath desiccates your mucous membranes. Every step drains strength that can no longer be replenished. You stand on the threshold of a world that has ceased to be hospitable, a world that is no longer yours. And this is not the beginning of the apocalypse. This is its sole and final form. Now listen to the silence. It is a new silence, deeper than just the absence of sound. It is the silence of stalled mechanisms, idle pumps, a global system rendered useless. But listen, not with your ears, but with your mind. Do you hear it? A desperate methodical search is beginning. It does not start in rivers or lakes, for they are now merely geological features, memories captured in stone. It begins in the bones of the civilization we built. Look around at the environment you are in right now. Every object you see holds a potential secret, a hidden reservoir. Your heating system, the pipes in the walls, they are no longer just for heating. They are a network of potential veins containing stagnant treated water, the last legacy of a world filled with moisture. The chemical plant on the outskirts of the city, the one you never think about, is no longer an industrial facility. It is a treasure trove. Its massive storage tanks are now in your mind, cisterns of priceless liquid. The supermarket shelves, emptied of water bottles, are now being scoured with a new purpose. Soda bottles, cans of preserved fruit, even containers of windshield washer fluid, all become targets. These are no longer consumer goods, but vessels for survival. Now look inside the medicine cabinet. Saline solution, hydrogen peroxide, injection fluids, all are transforming from medications into strategic resources. Every drop counts. Imagine the process: methodical extraction, transfer, consolidation. This is not chaotic looting, but a new, grim form of logistics. Air conditioning systems, once creators of comfort, are now viewed as potential sources of condensation. The last pathetic drops that can be squeezed from the desiccated atmosphere. Every car radiator, every hydraulic press in a factory, every boiler, all become objects of intense study and assault. This is the great inventory, the census of all liquid remaining in the artificial world, and it begins right here, in the very heart of the environment we created, which has suddenly turned against us, becoming both a storage vault and a prison. Now look at the cities. not at the buildings, but at what lies between them. The roads that were the arteries of civilization have now become mere lines on a dusty surface. But why? The answer lies in what you cannot see. Electricity. That very force that lit the lights and set the world in motion has ceased to exist. Let's trace this chain. Thermal power plants, which provided light for your homes, required millions of liters of water to cool their turbines. Now their cooling towers stand dry and scorched, like giant tombstones. Nuclear reactors were scrammed in an emergency. Without water circulation, they became ticking time bombs. But the collapse went further. Look at the factory floors. Without energy and water, everything has stopped. From metallurgical plants to microchip factories. Hydraulic presses are frozen in their final positions. Assembly lines have halted forever. And now consider what happens when industry dies. There is no more fertilizer production, meaning the soil becomes mere dust. There are no purification systems, and the air fills with poisonous vapors from the final accidents at chemical plants. The agriculture that fed billions vanished within days. Irrigation systems have become networks of empty canals. Tractors and combines have become useless piles of metal, not just due to the lack of fuel, but because there is nothing left to cultivate. The soil, deprived of moisture, has turned to dust, carried away by the wind from what were once fields. This is not merely a halt in production. This is the disintegration of the very foundation of modern civilization. Every factory, every power plant, every farm was a link in a single chain. And when one link breaks, everything collapses. Now cities have become traps. Without elevators, without ventilation systems, without sewage, skyscrapers turn into concrete coffins. Roads lead to nowhere because there are no places left to go. This is not an apocalypse of fire and explosions. This is a quiet, methodical decay of everything that was once considered unshakable. The civilization built on water is returning to a state of dust. Observe these silent laboratories. The desperate search has shifted from attempts to find water to attempts to create its substitute. Look at these complex chemical structures on the screen. Scientists are trying to construct molecular chains capable of mimicking water's properties. But every potential replacement faces the same fundamental problem. Hydrogen peroxide solutions could transport oxygen, but they corrode living tissue. Organic solvents like glycerol can absorb heat, yet they poison biological systems at the cellular level. Watch this simulation of a synthetic blood substitute circulating through blood vessels. The red blood cells, designed to carry oxygen without an aqueous medium, begin to clump together after just 3 cycles. The problem isn't just chemistry, it's physics. Water's unique heat capacity, its surface tension, its role as a universal solvent, these properties shaped evolution itself. Now witness the attempts to create alternatives for industrial cooling. Liquid metals like sodium can transfer heat, but they solidify in complex pipeline systems. Compressed gases require energy that no longer exists. Consider the agricultural experiments. Hydrogels designed to retain moisture instead create toxic swamps in the soil. Atmospheric water generators stand idle. Without humidity in the air, they become monuments to futility. The pharmaceutical industry's attempts to create medicines that don't require water result in crystals that the human body cannot absorb. Even the simplest processes fail. Without water's lubricating properties, mechanisms grind themselves into dust within hours. Look at these proposed closed-loop systems, where every drop is constantly recycled. The mathematics on the screen appear perfect, but reality introduces errors. Each cycle loses percentage points to evaporation, contamination, and chemical degradation. After 100 cycles, the liquid turns into poisonous sludge. A fundamental truth becomes undeniable. Water is not just a resource. It is the medium in which life and technology exist. Without it, the equations of existence itself cease to balance. The civilization built on manipulating matter is discovering that some elements cannot be replaced. Now turn your attention to the new phase of evolution. Since synthesizing a replacement has proven impossible, a great restructuring of life itself is beginning. Look at these biological prototypes. Engineers are combining the filtration systems of desert beetles with the recycling technologies of space stations. Symbiotic organisms are being created, capable of extracting moisture from the chemical reactions of their own metabolism. Observe the operation of the biological factories. Genetically modified bacteria now process organic waste into a dense nutrient gel, reducing the need for liquid by 80%. The circulatory systems of mammals are undergoing reconstruction. Engineers are replacing plasma with complex polymer suspensions capable of carrying oxygen without a water base. But the price of such adaptation is high. Each such creature becomes hostage to a system of constant technical maintenance. Study the architectural projects of the new generation. Buildings are now designed as fully enclosed ecosystems. Special membranes on the outer walls capture the slightest traces of atmospheric moisture, and recovery systems collect every molecule of water from exhaled air and skin vapors. Cities are turning into collections of isolated capsules, where living space is measured in cubic meters of recirculated liquid. Pay attention to the industrial processes. Factories no longer use water for cooling. Instead, pulsed heat removal systems are used, operating on the principles of evaporation from the surfaces of nanomaterials. Even food production has undergone a revolution. Food now has a gel-like consistency and is produced by cold synthesis from recycled biomass. But the most important changes are happening at the cellular level. Scientists are working on creating organisms with slowed metabolism, where all biochemical processes are optimized for minimal moisture consumption. This is no longer just survival, it is the fundamental reprogramming of biology for new conditions of existence. Now observe the social structure. It is no longer defined by national borders or ideologies. The only organizing criterion is access to recirculation systems. Look at these fortified enclaves. They are emerging around the last functioning biological factories and closed hydrosystems. Their architecture speaks for itself. Multi-layered protective domes, airlock chambers, filters at every entrance. Pay attention to their ranking system within such communities. At the top of the hierarchy are the technical specialists capable of maintaining life support systems. Next, security personnel controlling access to resources. The majority of the population performs functions related to servicing complex machinery. But the most interesting category is the biomass donors. People whose organic waste becomes raw material for the production of nutrient gels and technical fluids. Study the map of movements between enclaves. It resembles a circulatory system where resources flow instead of blood. Every transition from one capsule to another requires a complex procedure of disinfection and inspection. Moisture smuggling has become the most serious crime, and its discovery leads to the immediate isolation of the entire sector. Look at the communication systems. Speech has practically fallen out of use. To preserve moisture in the body, communication has shifted to sign language and digital interfaces. Even these interfaces are adapted to the new conditions. Touchscreens operate based on motion recognition without tactile contact to reduce surface contamination. Pay attention to the legal system. Laws now boil down to a single principle: preserving the recirculation loop. Any action leading to fluid loss is punished by transfer to the biomass donor category. Social elevators work only in one direction, upward through demonstrating efficiency in resource conservation. This is a society where a person's value is measured by their ability to minimize their own metabolism and maintain system operations. States have disappeared, leaving behind an archipelago of isolated techno-communities, each engaged in a constant struggle to preserve its closed cycle. Now turn your attention to the most fundamental changes, those occurring at the biological level. Observe these metabolic activity charts. The metabolic rate has decreased by 67% compared to baseline readings. The organism is learning to function in a state of constant deficit. The production of saliva and gastric juice has been reduced to the minimum necessary level. Even the breathing process has changed. Breaths have become less frequent and deeper to reduce moisture loss through the lungs. Study the transformation of motor functions. Watch the nature of movements. They have become smooth, slowed, devoid of sharp gestures. Energy conservation manifests in every detail of behavior. Even blinking occurs less frequently. Eyelids close more slowly, creating more effective protection for the cornea. Observe how the structure of the skin has changed. It has become thicker, with a pronounced stratum corneum, resembling the coverings of desert animals. Pay attention to social interaction. Verbal communication has been reduced to 3 to 4 minutes per day. Most communication occurs through a system of gestures where every symbol is optimized for movement amplitude. Even emotional reactions have changed. Facial expressions have become minimal. Laughter and tears have practically disappeared as physiological processes. Social bonds are maintained through tactile contact, which requires less energy expenditure than verbal communication. Analyze the changes in sleep structure. The duration of wakefulness has increased to 20 hours, while sleep has become short and intermittent. Brain activity during rest shows unusual patterns. The REM sleep phase has decreased, giving way to deep sleep, which better preserves the body's resources. Eating behavior has also transformed. Meals occur 1 to 2 times per day, with chewing becoming more thorough and prolonged. Examine collective behavioral patterns. Group interaction is built on the principle of energy efficiency. Joint actions are synchronized to milliseconds to avoid unnecessary movements. Even conflicts are resolved through ritualized confrontations, where victory is determined not by physical superiority, but by the ability to maintain a static position longer. This is no longer just adaptation, it is the emergence of a new biological reality, where every organism becomes a highly efficient system for resource conservation. Now behold the final frontier of science. When biological adaptation reached its limit, the ultimate stage of transformation began. Observe these drilling rigs. They penetrate to depths previously considered unreachable. Engineers are boring wells all the way to the Earth's mantle in search of traces of bound water in mineral structures. Every hole in the Earth's crust is an attempt to reach hypothetical reservoirs remaining from the planet's formation. Study the next generation atmospheric stations. Giant domes with molecular filters are trying to extract the last molecules of water vapor from the stratosphere. These structures operate on the principle of cryogenic deposition, freezing rarefied gases at temperatures close to absolute zero. But the output is measured in drops per day, a statistical error in the planet's water balance. Turn your attention to the orbital systems. Satellites with hyperspectral sensors are scanning the surface in search of hydrated minerals. Every detection of phyllosilicates or gypsum deposits triggers the mobilization of drilling teams. But most deposits turn out to have been exhausted decades ago. Humanity has already depleted all easily accessible sources. Analyze the quantum computer data. They are modeling thermodynamic processes in the Earth's mantle, trying to find anomalies in hydrogen distribution. According to simulations, some amount of water might be preserved in the crystal lattices of minerals at depths exceeding 600 kilometers. But extracting these resources requires technologies that have not yet been invented. Look at the experimental nuclear fusion installations. Scientists are attempting to synthesize water directly from hydrogen and oxygen, obtaining hydrogen through the electrolysis of bedrock. So far, the energy costs are thousands of times greater than the theoretical output. Every liter of synthesized water requires the energy equivalent of a small city. Examine the map of underground research. Former mines and tunnels have transformed into vertical cities, where people search for remnants of moisture in ancient geological strata. These underground complexes extend kilometers deep, the final refuge of a civilization that has retreated from the lifeless surface. This is no longer a search for a solution. It is a demonstration of a fundamental principle. When a system loses its key component, all subsequent actions become merely a postponement of the inevitable. Technologies capable of creating the most complex devices prove powerless against the simplest chemical formula. Now observe the final stage. All activity has ceased. Those underground complexes, once teeming with life, now lie in complete darkness. Their life support systems have shut down, having exhausted the last reserves. The slow, economical movements that characterized the previous phase have been replaced by absolute stillness. Turn your attention to the monitor screens. Biometric sensors no longer transmit signals. Brain activity curves have flatlined completely. The final attempts at communication between enclaves have ceased, not because there was nothing left to say, but because there was no means to transmit the signal. The energy reserves that power transmitters and computers have been depleted to zero. Study the planet's surface. No movement remains except for sandstorms grinding down the remnants of civilization. Cities are slowly turning to dust under the assault of dry winds. Metal structures are crumbling into rusty debris without the protective layer of atmospheric moisture. Glass has become brittle and shatters under its own weight. Observe the global climate systems. They have stabilized into a new state. Constant high pressure, zero humidity, temperatures unchanging throughout the day. The atmosphere has lost its primary regulator, and the climate now resembles conditions on other rocky planets without a hydrosphere. Pay attention to the biological remnants. The last genetically modified organisms capable of existing with minimal humidity have ceased metabolic processes. Their cells entered a state of cryptobiosis, but without the possibility of subsequent reactivation. Evolution, which lasted billions of years, has reached its logical conclusion. Examine the geological changes. Without the hydrological cycle, the processes of erosion and sedimentation have stopped. Tectonic movements continue, but they no longer meet the resistance of water in rock pores. The planet is gradually acquiring geophysical characteristics similar to other celestial bodies in the terrestrial group that lack a hydrosphere. This is not a catastrophe or a tragedy. It is simply the end of a long process that began with the disappearance of a single chemical compound. A civilization that reached incredible technological heights proved dependent on the simplest molecule. Now perfect silence reigns, not the silence of stalled machinery, but the silence of a completed equation, all of whose variables have found their final values.